Hello class. We want to continue by looking at the determinants of demand. When we talk of determinants of demand, basically we are looking at the factors that influence the demand for a commodity. In other words, the factors that will make consumers buy more or less of a commodity. And the factors are: one, the price of the commodity in question, prices of other related commodities, then the income of the consumer, consumers' taste and preferences, population size, availability of credit facilities, expectation of future changes in price or income, and then changes in the weather conditions or the state of the weather. So without much ado, let's look at the first factor, which is the price of the commodity in question. So as indicated in the law of demand, normally when prices are high, consumers demand less. When prices are low, consumers demand more. But the question is, why do consumers normally demand more at lower prices and less at higher prices? We have just two reasons. The first reason is income effect, and the second one is substitution effect. What do we mean by income effect? For income effects, it deals with the real value of money. If you have 20 cedis, or let me say the 20 cedi notes, the number on it, the number 20 on it is the nominal value, but the real value is the actual amount of goods that 20 cedi notes can buy. So what it means is that anytime price rises with the same nominal or face value, the consumer is able to buy less. So with 20 cedis, if price is 4 cedis, consumer can now buy 5 units of the commodity. But then when price increases to 5 cedis, the real value of the money has fallen. Real value has fallen, although the nominal value is the same. So with the increment in price from 4 cedis to 5 cedis, the consumer can now buy 4 units instead of the 5. So this explains why, the first reason why consumers normally buy more when prices are low and less when prices are high. And then substitution effect. This is about relative prices. So talking about two commodities that are substitutes, when the price of one rises whilst the price of the other remains the same, the consumer will substitute the one whose price hasn't changed for the one whose price has what? Risen. So in view of this, the demand for the commodity whose price has risen will fall. So the substitution effect is about relative prices. The consumer will always substitute the commodity whose price hasn't risen for the one whose price has what? Risen. And then the next factor is prices of other related commodities. And here we distinguish between substitutes and complements. Substitutes serve more or less the same purpose. For instance, let's say pig milk, and then idle milk. Pig milk and idle milk. These two commodities serve more or less the same purpose. So if the price of idle milk increases, whilst that of pig milk remains the same, consumers will switch to demand pig milk, whose price hasn't risen. So it means that for substitutes, an increase in price of one leads to an increase in demand for the other. So substitutes move in the same direction, and for that matter, we say they are positively or directly related. In the case of complements, an increase in price of one leads to a decrease in demand for the other. So complements, on the other hand, are inversely related. For instance, fuel and car. When the price of fuel rises, other things being equal, demand for cars will definitely come down, especially private cars. Because fuel price has risen, it has become more expensive, more costly to use private cars. So demand for private cars will drop. On the other hand, if fuel prices come down so low, then demand for private cars may rise. as you all know, buying a car is not as difficult as fueling it. So if fuel prices come down so low, consumers will demand more. So in short, when it comes to substitutes, an increase in price of one will lead to an increase in demand for the other. And hence, we say they are positively related. But when it comes to complements, an increase in price of one leads to a decrease in demand for the other. And for that matter, we say complements are inversely related. The next factor, as you can see, is income of the consumer. In general, when income increases, the consumer demands more. But then, in specific terms, we distinguish between two main classes of goods: normal or superior goods, and then inferior goods. When we say normal goods, normally normal goods are positively related to income. What it means is that as income is rising, demand is also increasing. So for normal goods, anytime our incomes are increasing, we are buying more, especially cars. Yeah, cars, perfumes, these are normal goods. Because the higher your income, the higher the level of demand for it. And then we come to inferior. In economic theory, anything inferior is negatively related to income. That is, when income is increasing, then we are buying less. But remember, what is inferior in country A may not be inferior in country B. For instance, when it comes to Gary, in one country, it may be a delicacy, but in another country, it may be what? Inferior. Such that as income, remember, inferior goods are related to income. So as income is increasing, then consumers are demanding less. But then for the normal goods, we also have two types of the normal goods. Normal goods, we have those termed as luxurious and those termed as necessities. For luxurious ones, as income is increasing, we buy more and more luxurious ones, like jewels and perfumes and all electrical appliances, the houses and the cars. These are termed as luxurious because as incomes are increasing, we are buying more. But for some commodities, regardless of your level of income, the amount you need is almost always the same. Example, buckets. Who will buy buckets at the end of every month? Buckets, whether you are rich, a high income earner or low income earner, the amount you need is almost always the same. And those commodities are classified as necessities. Armchairs, bed, furniture, these ones, we buy them once in a blue moon. And that's why we say they are necessities. So in short, commodities that are luxurious, as income is increasing, consumer is buying more and more. If it is a necessity, as income is increasing, demand remains more or less constant or increases slightly. But for inferior goods, as income is increasing, then demand is rather what? Decreasing. Now the next factor is consumers' taste and preferences. Consumers' taste and preferences. You see, normally when consumers develop a very strong taste towards the consumption of a commodity, other things being equal, demand also increases. So that's why somebody said that for you to be rich, just identify what people like, what people want, and produce it. If they like it, they will buy. So you produce according to the taste of consumers. Bear in mind that businessmen are expected to produce according to the taste of consumers. And so far as they like it, they will buy it, and that will be the beginning of your riches. Now, population size. For me, I see population to be money. Anytime you see population, then it means that people are ready to buy, to demand, express demand for goods and services. So the higher the population size, the higher the demand for goods and services. So if a church is having convention, you see a large population by your house, then it's a blessing. take advantage and sell more, and that will be the beginning of your riches. Then, availability of credit facilities. When consumers get access to credit, access to loans, and what have you, other things being equal, they are going to demand more. But when people don't have access to credit, some time ago in Ghana, banks were chasing people for loans. And I remember in that year, a lot of people were buying cars just like that, because people had access to credit facilities. So when people have access to credit facilities, other things being equal, they express more demand for goods and services. Then expectation. When we expect prices to increase in future, we may buy more in the current period. And then the weather conditions. The weather conditions, sometimes, as you all know, if the weather becomes very cold, for instance, demand for cold food items may go down. But then commodities like umbrella, raincoats, and what have you in rainy season and what have you, their demand may increase. So the state of the weather can also influence the level of demand. Very much I do want to continue the various types of demand. And with this, the first we are talking about is joint or complementary demand. Joint or complementary demand. So here, two goods are said to have complementary demand when they are consumed together in order to serve a purpose. Like for instance, without fuel, to be difficult to use a car. Yeah, so these are car and fuel are a very good example of complement. In fact, we have perfect complements, like left shoe and right shoe. For the perfect ones, in absence of one, you cannot even use the other. And then toothpaste and toothbrush, phone and SIM. These are complements. They are demanded together in order to serve a purpose. And in that case, we say they have joint demand. And then competitive demand. This relates to substitutes, like they are competitive. The two commodities are more or less competing. Example, mutton and beef. Yeah, you may either use mutton or beef for soup. So if the price of beef increases while that of mutton remains the same, people may go in for mutton. So substitutes, it's like they are a competition. So normally, two commodities that serve more or less the same purpose are said to have competitive demand. And then we have derived demand. Derived what? Demand. Derived demand means that the demand for one necessitates the demand for the other. Demand for one will definitely cause us to demand the other commodity. And I would say that derived demand normally relates to raw materials. Like you need the raw material in order to sort of, not raw materials per se, but raw materials in order to obtain what you want. Like for instance, you need leather in order to manufacture shoes. You need leather. So the derived demand for shoes is leather. Because without the leather, you cannot get the what? The shoes. And then wood may also be demanded in order to produce what? Furniture. And then we have composite. Like, as you all know in mathematics, when you say a composite number, it has several what? Factors. A number that has several factors. So composite demand means that the commodity is demanded for several purposes. For instance, wood may be demanded to be used as a furniture, doors, roofing, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much for your attention once again.